joining us for another episode of the Friday Five here on the Agent Survival Guide podcast. Today is Friday, February 14th. So in addition to a happy Friday, happy Valentine's Day to you. We talked about gift ideas last week, and that is about as far as we're planning to go on Cupid's behalf here on the show. But that doesn't mean we don't have a great list this week, so let's get into it. Starting out at number 5, iOS 18.3.1 came out on Monday this week. The update was mainly a security patch, but Apple did manage to sneak a few extra small updates in there. The first of which many Apple users probably noticed right away. AI notification summaries have an updated style. So they still use the summary character, 2 lines stacked on top of each other. The top line is longer to indicate text, and then those lines are underlined by a downward arrow pointing to the right and followed by the summarized text. That text is now italicized, so users can really tell that it has been run through Apple Intelligence. I found myself scrolling through those notifications very quickly. So while I do appreciate the distinction, I think maybe that tells me that I might need to adjust my notification settings. The other notable addition, and I say notable like it's a huge thing when actually it was a very small update that reminded me of a feature that I was excited about but never got around to playing with, and I think that description is probably why Apple made this change. In the iOS 18.3.1 update, Apple popped out that photographic styles icon, so it's more easily accessible. Previously, it lived in the menu that pops up when you hit the camera controls button, so it took 2 taps to get into the feature previously. Now the photographic styles icon lives in the upper right-hand corner of the camera app next to the live icon, so only 1 tap to get into it now. On the iPhone 16, there are 15 preset styles to choose from, including the standard setting. And then users can dial in and adjust their settings even further to really fine-tune the look of photos before you take them. Very cool update, and while I was looking around for mention of these features, it looks like the iOS 18.4 update is going to be a pretty decent one. The beta version is due out in a couple of weeks, while the main release is set for April. We'll be keeping an eye out for more info on those updates in the coming weeks. Number 4. There's not a lot to this one, but I feel like it's worth a mention because it's a new trend that solves a problem I was having at the gym the other week. I do a mix of cardio and lifting when I go to the gym, and most of the time I go for the dumbbells because that's what I have at home. Well, on this particular day, there were no dumbbells in the weight that I needed, only kettlebells, and I ran into an interesting issue. I could not do a couple exercises because the kettlebell flapped back onto my wrist, and I was afraid it would crack my Apple Watch. Now, sure, I could have moved it to the other arm in order to avoid that, but who wants to keep doing that through their entire workout? Well, it turns out I'm not alone. That's one of a couple different reasons that some Apple Watch owners put their watch on their ankle rather than on their wrist. And I have to say, I never thought of that before, mainly because a watch goes on your wrist, right? But apparently this is a trending hack on TikTok for moms pushing a stroller, people walking while working at a standing desk, and a few other reasons, including the kettlebell issue I had at the gym. So there you have it. If you've been to the gym and you've seen people wearing their watches on their ankles, they're either trying to remedy any issues they've been having or they're just really into the latest trends on TikTok. We do not judge here at the ASG podcast, and to be honest, this is a TikTok hack I might actually try. Number 3. Cases of bird flu have been picking up around the country, resulting in rising egg prices and now shortages in some areas. January 2023 was the height of the peak last time around, with prices at $4.82 a dozen. In my neck of the woods, Walmart's price for a dozen eggs was $5.46 at the time of recording. Needless to say, many of us are now buying less eggs or trying to find substitutes. I found a couple of great resources this week that are perfect to share on social media or in your newsletters right now. 2 of those resources share protein alternatives if your family is like my family and loves a good egg breakfast or brunch, and to be honest, sometimes dinner. And then the other 2 focus on substituting eggs in baked goods and how those substitutions affect the outcome of your recipe. Now, I might have shared that during the pandemic, I went on a little bit of a chickpea binge. Well, turns out if you're using canned chickpeas, the liquid inside the can is a great replacement for egg whites. And don't sleep on mayo either. I know some people have quite the aversion to mayo, but it is a great replacement for eggs. And fun fact, my mother-in-law makes an amazing chocolate cake that uses mayo instead of eggs, and it is absolutely fantastic. Chocolate cakes can have a tendency to be dry, and that one is not at all. So check out those substitutions, add them to your social media and newsletters in the coming weeks. And if you've got a go-to substitution, maybe it goes along with a favorite recipe, write a short little story about it and include the recipe. We all love recipe recommendations. Moving on to number 2 on our list this week. Pretty brief mention here. We haven't seen a lot of regulatory news, and that's because we're still in the midst of the transition period where the new administration looks back and reviews policy, gets their bearing, and figures out how they'd like to move forward. That being said, I do like staying on top of where we're at with everything, so I'd like to pass along 2 articles that can offer some insight. ThinkAdvisor published a roundup at the end of January with some ideas that are currently being floated. And then more recently, Fierce Healthcare published something similar, a little more broadly, covering the industry as a whole. Just to name a few of these potential areas of legislation, they are looking at telehealth regulations, Medicare Advantage regulations, PBM reform, potential changes to drug policies put in place by the Inflation Reduction Act, and ACA subsidies, just to name a few. I'm passing these along because I like keeping track of things and checking in over time, relaying that back here, and we are continuing to monitor what's going on. I think we're likely to see movement on many of these topics with the new administration in place, but how that movement is carried out, whether or not the ideas shift and change, well, that remains to be seen, but that is what we are currently tracking. If there's a topic that you would like us to report on in a little more detail, or questions that you have about a specific topic, please send those in. We will answer those here on the show. It is as simple as sending an email to asgpodcast@ritterim.com, or you can call into our hotline at 1-717-562-7211. Coming in at number 1 this week, Sunday marked the culmination of the current football season. Now, I am not a huge football fan, but it was great watching the game and seeing my team win. And now we're in the postseason. We know the formula. There's a win, we're going to Disneyland, and then there's a parade, right? It reminds me of how after the annual enrollment period ends, after the open enrollment period ends, we find ourselves in a similar kind of postseason. Of course, we don't get the parade down Main Street to celebrate our sales, but There are some post-AEP and post-OEP actions worth taking. Rather than thinking about this time frame as an off-season, we encourage you to think about it like the pros. It's the postseason, and the work still continues. But what does that work look like? So glad you asked, because we have a postseason game plan that can help you build on that momentum and keep you moving forward. So what does that look like outside of AEP? The postseason is a great time to follow up with your clients about additional needs. It's the time to build your client relationships, actively work on retention, and serve your clients and their families beyond their health plans. That means talking about coverage like life insurance and final expense insurance. And we get it, that's not always the most comfortable thing to talk about, but it is so important for your clients. That's why we'd like to share a resource that helps you get a little more comfortable with that conversation. Why it's important, when to bring it up, and how shifting gears can keep your business thriving all year long. The postseason game plan is a guide that walks agents through that process, introducing resources from Legacy Safeguard University. It includes training, lead generation, sales presentations, and more to help you become a trusted resource for your clients. You can get a digital copy or the audiobook version completely free at postseasongameplan.com. And that is all one word, postseasongameplan.com. There's a short video from Steve Young on that page, and you can choose whether you'd like to download the ebook, the audiobook, or both. And bonus, the marketing materials available to go along with this resource are pre-approved, so you don't have to worry about compliance. You've survived AEP. You've survived OEP. Now it is time to thrive. Don't forget to download your copy. That link again is postseasongameplan.com, and you'll find a link in our episode notes as well. While you're there, we'd appreciate it if you hit that follow button to let us know you like what we're doing here on the show. It's a great way to let us know you value the information we're bringing to you. And like we always say, we're here to help you thrive. That is our goal. So thanks so much for letting us come along on your journey with you. That does it for this week's episode. I hope you have a fantastic Valentine's Day and a great weekend. Stay healthy and stay safe out there, and we will see you next week. The Agent Survival Guide podcast is a production of Ritter Insurance Marketing, an Integrity company. This episode was written and produced by me, Sarah Ruppel, script editing and fact check by Tina Lamoureux, podcast design by Urban Rivera, artwork by Vivian Zhao. Follow along with us wherever you like to listen.